And that's the end of the music. Welcome to Real Monsters one more time. We need to fire our producer and engineer.
Oh man.
That's me.
Yeah.
Anybody
I
want
wish
the job?
I knew how to do some of that, but yeah.
It's my least favorite part of the show. Welcome to Real Monsters, everybody. It's Thursday night. We're going to talk about some more about this crazy town called Skidmore and the county in which it resides.
Not away.
Not away.
Kind of a weird
way.
name.
Much way.
It actually comes from one of the Indian tribes, if I'm not mistaken. You would think that Nottoway might have been something like English, but no. It was something from one of the Indian tribes.
All right, so first things first. We have M of the Week.
Yep.
Because she's our weekly palate cleanser for all the crazy shit that goes on, and including this show. And she is hilarious all the time, except when she's laying on my legs at night and I can't get to sleep.
Oh, she's such a good dog.
Some of the times, she's especially good when she's asleep. All right, now we have current business, new business, I guess.
Oh, yes, that
we
do.
So, a year ago, these cops in Houston exercised a no-knock search warrant on a residence and ended up killing the two residents inside and their dog.
Mm-hmm.
And turns out it was all bogus. The police lied.
Yeah.
The police lied to get the warrant. The couple involved were not involved in any criminal activity. And now one of the police officers who's facing murder charges, as they should, there are several, claims that it's the victim's fault for shooting back.
They will. I mean, they absolutely will claim that, and it's disgusting every single time.
How dare they defend themselves from an illegal search?
You know, it just got me thinking that in Indiana, it's actually legal to do that kind of defense. If it's a police officer coming in and you have justifiable fear for your life or the lives of your loved ones around you.
Yeah, these no-knock searches go wrong so often. They need to be banned at a federal level.
They do. They absolutely do. And for people who don't know, these are most often associated with the drug war. When
Yeah.
they're serving a narcotics warrant, they'll do the no knock.
And you see cases where they they go against a house based on the flimsiest of evidence, or they go
Mm-hmm.
to the wrong fucking house, um,
Yeah,
and then they end up killing people because they go in like a military raid,
yeah,
and it, you know what, it doesn't matter if they call out this is the police. When you have people barging into your home in the middle of the night, waking you out of sleep, you probably aren't listening to that part. And even
yeah,
if they do say it, well, you don't have any reason to believe it. If you're not a criminal and people start
yeah.
barging into their house in the middle of the night saying they're the police, you don't know that that's the truth.
You're not thinking rationally
Even if
at
you're
the time.
and even if you are rational, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
any reason to believe that the police would be coming into your house,
Yep,
busting your door down and shooting your dog. It could be anybody saying they're the police.
pretty much. And a big part of that, I think, is if you give them certain toys, they're going to want to use it.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
let's say, there's the example that Rand Paul pointed out in, like, I think 2013, where they were actually getting bayonets from the federal government.
Why?
Ti- Tiny local police offices were getting bayonets from the federal government. And they never said the purpose. But it was through a what's called a 1080 program
Oh yeah, where
where
they
they take like decommissioned federal equipment.
military
Um,
military grade equipment and give them to local police.
yeah. And what do you think's going to happen when they have their toys?
Oh,
That's what I
they want to go
usually
they want
ask
to take them
people.
out and play with them.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand, having a local SWAT unit to deal with like hostage situations and the truly bizarre shit that comes up like that. But the problem is with these no knock warrants, you're getting SWAT doing every single one of them,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
That's why you see the massive jump in SWAT raids from the 1980s until today.
It's like they can't just knock on the door and serve a warrant anymore. They have to go in heavy every single time. And that scares the
Yeah,
shit out of people.
yeah. And I mean, the police will say that, oh, we have a legitimate worry about our lives going in there too. But on the same period
But
with that,
but they're putting themselves at more risk in my opinion.
yeah, by doing that, they are putting themselves at more risk. I think there's actually scientific studies that back that up. That more force tends to breed, more force,
Right.
more violence
Right.
with the person you're trying to intercept. So,
Frankly, I think this is because um, the government is afraid of their citizens, and they want to be able to impose their will on the citizenship and have a police force that can do that, you know.
mm-hmm.
And frankly, I think the government needs to be afraid of the citizens. Otherwise, they're going to.
Thomas Jefferson said something similar to that.
Yeah. What? I didn't think of that all on
Uh,
my own? Dang it.
well, V and V for Vendetta quoted it, but I don't think he quoted the exact one. It was like a summation of
Yeah.
Jefferson's quote. Um, but yeah, I mean, absolutely, that
Uh,
should be the case.
yeah. Listen, There are a lot of good cops in the world, in this country,
Yeah,
and quite possibly most cops are good, decent people trying to do a very difficult job. And you guys need to this idea of the blue line is bullshit. Corruption needs to end. And the
yeah,
way it ends is the good guys have to turn in the bad guys. That's how you end that shit. You gotta sack up
exactly,
and take a stand.
exactly. And you have to look at structures that are keeping that dynamic enshrined too, like the police officers' unions.
Oh yeah,
Way too much power.
way too much.
Jefferson's quote was, "When government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny."
Yep. That smart guy that Jefferson, he agrees with me.
Yeah, one of my favorite presidents, no doubt.
The other thing that needs to end is qualified immunity.
Yeah.
And that way,
Um,
if a cop commits a crime, he has to suffer the consequences. There's no, just like any other citizen, he doesn't get any breaks.
right. Right, and that's for people who don't know. They claim qualified immunity by essentially saying what I did was necessary as part of my job. Qualified immunity also only applies in the civil sector. It doesn't apply in the criminal side.
Yeah, and it was also completely made up by a judge.
Oh, I believe it.
There's
I
no
absolutely
legal,
believe it.
there's no pre-existing. Before this judge, and I forget who it was, before he made this up out of thin air, there was no precedent for
Hmm.
it. Nothing in the Constitution, nothing in the laws to back that up. He just made that shit up.
Hmm.
It needs to be
Yeah, you
unmade.
just exactly. It's sad when you get judges who are more inclined to rule with the state than the individual. My opinion, that's the opposite of their function.
Yeah,
Their function is to keep the state rigorous, keep them on its toes, and keep them fair, too.
absolutely.
Yep.
All right. This crazy county.
Yeah, we are returning to Nottoway County, Missouri. Do we have the maps
Yeah,
of
they'll be
it?
they'll be coming along
They're just
shortly.
floating by.
Yep.
Um, we went over the case, the very strange case of Ken Rex McElroy in last week's episode,
Now
who was,
you gonna do a recap?
yeah, I thought
Right.
we might do a bit of one.
Okay.
Um, but Ken Rex McElroy was the bully of Nottoway County. In fact, his nickname was Bad Dog. Uh, and he was known for, assaulting people. He put one buckshot round into a guy's belly for no apparent reason. And then he also shot the local grocer in the small town of Skidmore twice with his 12 gauge.
Because the
Once in the
grocer
neck
didn't
and
want
once in his stomach.
because the grocer didn't want Ken's daughter's shoplifting from him.
But it was my understanding that the grocer didn't even see it as a big deal.
Yeah, I
Because it
mean,
was just a couple of pieces of candy. But apparently when Ken Rex's young wife Trina walks into the store, she got a little irate with the Boeing camps. And that was when they said, "No, you're not welcome back here." So, Which
Yeah,
another thing to
those
know
two,
about
those
Mr. McElroy.
those two were quite a pair. I
Yeah.
mean, they were definitely a chemical combination, a volatile chemical combination when they were together.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Which
Kelly wants to know what year was the Ken Rex
the shooting,
shooting?
1981.
Ah, there you go.
Um, which that will be relevant here in a few minutes. But yeah, he also he shot the grocer once in the neck with a 12 gauge and once in the stomach with it. And the grocer, Mr. Bowenkamp, luckily lived. He fingered Ken Rex as the trigger man who shot him for no reason. And they arrested him. He bonded out until the trial. And when they took him to trial, he was found guilty and they allowed him to bond out again.
I have never ever heard of this in a criminal case where and you see it on the shows all the time. Like, oh, he's guilty, handcuff him and haul him out, right?
They let him bond out on appeal. And I don't get it. Why they would do that. Because
Yeah.
you're talking about a man here who has about 24 felonies on his record. Okay.
Indictments, but not convictions, remember.
Yes. No convictions, but all indictments. There's indictments for statutory rape.
Yeah.
There's indictments for cattle and hog rustling. There's indictments for stealing above $50. There's indictments for assault with intent to kill.
And a very long pattern of witness recantations.
Yes, that too. A lot of assaults on witnesses who could have testified
Yeah.
against him. So they do that, and Ken Rex bonds out after or pending the appeal. And, that was at the Maryville courthouse, about 15 to 17 miles from Skidmore, the county courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of townspeople in there as they were watching his sentencing. And he managed to beat them all back to Skidmore. And he was literally standing in the D&G Tavern with a loaded M1 Garand with the bayonet attached.
Did he get that from the federal?
Good question. But they found him in there, just, getting weird. And it got to the point where the next morning, the citizenry has this big meeting in the Legion Hall, which is basically right by the D&G Tavern where Ken Rex is going to get shot. And presumably at the meeting, there's a lot of rumors here. Since small towns are always huge rumor mills.
Sure.
But
unlike big cities.
This is true. But yeah, some people said, there was money exchanged to kill him and blah, 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 blah. But at any rate, somebody ran in from the street because Ken Rex was driving up to the D&G Tavern to get, drinks and what have you.
Yeah.
And this was early in the morning. And these are rural people. They don't have much else to, do. But that, so they are all following him in there, and they all sort of pack it. And the dynamic gets weird. And the owner of the D&G, the rancher by the name of Del Clement, who we had a picture of, told Ken Rex to get the hell out of town. So what happens? He walks out to his truck and starts turning the key, and Trina walks out to the passenger side. And all the people inside the bar follow them out and encircle them. And then you see a few different people go get guns and just start unloading on that truck in Trina and Ken. And by this time, you had upwards of about 45 to 70 people who were around in this area when the shots rang out.
And
Which,
three different calibers of
yes,
weapons were
three
used.
different calibers. 4 shots hit Ken Rex. One in the back of the head, one in the neck, and two in the back. Um, Trina did not get shot. They didn't shoot her. But she ended up being whisked away to the bank across the street, where she had apparently wet her pants after the people inside were apparently threatening to her.
Mm.
So you have that going on, and after that, the police just sort of bungled it. I mean, you had townspeople literally picking up skull fragments off of the highway where Ken Rex's body was laying, while his engine in the truck is still running too because of the weight of his foot on it.
Wow.
So they waited for the engine to explode or die. And like I said, meanwhile, there's people picking up skull fragments. One guy was picking up teeth off the highway. And there were presumably others who picked up shell casings. But the way that we knew about the 3 calibers you mentioned is when the feds found 3 different shell casings that these people missed when they were trying to pick it up. So you go on from there, and they call in the major case squad in this area of bumfuck Missouri, and they had maybe a couple of detectives from Kansas City to come up and help as well. And they end up convening a coroner's inquest, which is essentially a grand jury, but they found absolutely nothing with that. And so it was at that point that Trina and her lawyer, Dick McFadden from Kansas City, decided, you know what, we're going to call the FBI. Because supposedly the Nottoway County Sheriff was at that meeting where they were conspiring to kill Ken Rex. And that is a big part of what the FBI does, is investigate civil misconduct. So,
But they didn't find any evidence of that, did they?
nothing.
Yeah.
They had their own federal grand jury and they found nothing. So, what ultimately happened with that was Trina and McFadden decided to file a civil suit against the county and against the city, against the sheriff and the mayor. They were going for, I think, 11 to 17 million dollars, and they only ended up getting 11,000. So
Yeah,
she took that 11,000 and moved.
that's I've been on a couple of civil lawsuit juries, and um, sometimes in my personal experience, I've seen where people will go, yeah, okay, so we kind of want to give them something, but we don't want to give them much, so we'll give them like a minimal amount, and it's almost, you should see the faces of the lawyers. They're just like jaw dropping. Like they can't believe that that's all that they got out of all of that effort.
Wow.
It's kind of fun.
Oh, it always is fun to sadistically abuse a lawyer, but
So, a low, finding in favor of the plaintiff, but only give him a little bit of money
mhm.
is kind of a backhanded win.
Yeah, and it really is. But Trina ended up moving with the rest of the McElroy clan and just scattering all over. And she actually moved to the Ozarks in southern Missouri, where
Yeah.
the show Ozark takes place.
That's hilarious.
So it's called the Redneck Riviera, maybe 3 hours from me, where I'm sitting right now.
Okay.
But um, yeah, I mean, that was Ken Rex, and this shadow still casts a lot across that town. But there is so much more about the history of this area that it's just so freaking weird. Um,
Yeah,
and
as you sent me the Wikipedia page for the county, and it's the only one I've ever even heard of that the Wikipedia page for the county has a subheading for crimes,
yeah,
notable crimes in that county. In
oh
a
yeah,
county that has a smaller population than what turns out for a AAA baseball game.
yeah. You're looking at about 12 to maybe 14,000 people. And that is when Maryville's University is in session. So you're looking at maybe 11,000 when it's not. But to start that off, there's a really interesting story from 1888. And I was just looking for where I put that. Oh, yeah. It's on my written one here. And there was a fellow by the name of Dr. Perry Tablet, or Talbot, not Tablet, um, who, a little less than 100 years before Ken Rex, would be killed in, well, in his home, in his very nice home in Nottoway. Uh, and it would be one of the first notches of vigilante justice on the county's belt. But he gets his medical degree in Columbus. He's from Illinois. And one of the first things that he does after this is head out to California for the gold rush. Because it's about, 1849
Yeah.
on that time.
Where the term
But
49er comes from.
very true. Minor 49er. But it wasn't until Dr. Perry established himself as a country doctor in the Nottoway Skidmore area that he got his fortune. He was one of the original charter members of Nottoway County. And he ends up marrying a local woman in 1853, and they have 12 children.
Whoa, prodigious.
But yeah, it gets more interesting. It was during Reconstruction that Dr. Perry took a bit of a turn that may have propelled the motive for his 1881 murder. He used his cachet as a soldier in the Union Army in the Civil War to run as an independent Democrat in 1876. This position, it contrasted him with, what we would call swamp creatures today of both the Republican and Democratic persuasions.
What do you
And
mean by swamp creatures?
the
That's
ones who
I'm
had
guessing
been in
that's
there
a
a long
local term.
time.
What's
Well,
that?
it was actually one that Trump kind of popularized with Drain the Swamp. The
Okay.
ones who had been in there forever,
Right. Okay.
He had the spoil system going on pretty hard at this time too. Somebody gets elected, they give you a job, and you have to forever.
Right.
But Talbot, he went further to directly oppose the big banking interest and the financiers of the party machines. And he did this by associating himself with what was called the Greenback Labor Movement.
Hmm.
And basically, what they stood for was just abolishing a gold standard for currency.
Oh,
What
ahead
this
of their time.
uh, apparently, this guy kind of reminded me of Bernie Sanders in a little bit,
How
but
how does being a Union soldier play in Missouri though?
in this part of Missouri, it would be bloody, I would imagine, because you're looking at it's butting up, Nottoway is butting up to the state line with Kansas.
Right.
And throughout Kansas history, there was a section of it before it became a state called Bleeding Kansas,
Oh.
where you had free soilers who went there to settle to, make sure the state doesn't flip to the pro-slavery side. You had the free soilers battling the, you know, basically
The
the
Confederate.
pro-slave,
Yeah.
yeah, the Confederacy. So I would imagine, yeah, it could be problematic being a
Jesse
Democrat.
James was
Area.
from that part of Kansas.
Yes, yep, and he spent a lot of time in this area of Missouri too, in Nottoway. But Talbot was the editor of the party's publication of record, the Greenback Standard, and in 1880, he decided to shoot for loftier positions and announced his intent for running for president of the United States on the Greenback Labor ticket. Um,
Talbot did?
yeah,
What? He was that popular?
yep.
Wow.
He had a bit of a pre-existing propensity to be somewhat abusive to his family, though. And the stressors from all of this likely made that worse in him. Um, he was known to keep their house threadbare and kind of dingy. He was a miser at an intense and neurotic level, and he was reportedly not proud of any of his 12 children. Uh,
Wow.
but now the evening of September 8th, 1880 was fairly placid around that area. The doctor returned home from visiting a sick child, and he was studying a speech that he was planning to publish in the paper. And the next thing you know, a shooter fires one round through a window. It had a full entrance and exit pattern through the doctor's chest. It went through his wife's arm, entrance and exit, and it embedded itself in a wall.
Wow.
So,
And this was
apparently,
this was 1881?
1880.
1880. Okay.
Yeah.
So that
Um,
still would have been a mini ball, very likely.
well, it's interesting. We'll get to more about the bullet here in a
Okay.
minute. During the bedlam for all this, Dr. Talbot's son Albert, who I think we have a sketch of,
It's up
he
now.
grabs his shotgun and runs outside trying to find who it was. But then, according to neighbors, did a very curious thing. He
Okay.
did not attempt to pursue the parties any further.
Really?
So it's like he almost just scared him off his porch. Kind of weird, but the doctor managed to stay alive until 2:30 the following afternoon. And during that time, he talked with his family about how the murderers had to be, in his words, an assassin, paid by, again in his words, some enemy of the great cause which I represent. Um,
Well,
i.e.,
when you have grandiose plans like that, um, I think that's what you would go to, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you probably would. Um,
If I was standing
let's
by the
see.
window and got shot, I would not think assassination.
Yeah,
But I'm not trying to be
probably
president.
not. A coroner's inquest said that Talbot had been, quote, assassinated by some unknown person. Uh, but this verdict was very unsatisfactory to many of the people of Nottoway. Um, the sheriff, Henry Toll, and prosecutor W. Ramsey began pursuing other leads, which soon saw their focus fall on the doctor's family. Um, and as happens with many of these kinds of homicide cases, especially the ones going back a century or more, we've seen it a lot. People tend to look at a death reaction and
Yeah,
make a judgment from that,
right.
which
Is
never
is
turns
bullshit.
out good.
It's
Yeah, they kind of did that here.
I mean, it's an assumption that everybody reacts the same way to the same type of stressor,
Mm.
and which is completely 100% wrong.
Oh,
Everybody has
absolutely.
different reactions and different reasons for reactions, um, and it has nothing to do with guilt or innocence,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
I couldn't agree more with that. But they did have a couple other bits of evidence that were interesting. The town marshal in Maryville hired two experienced Pinkertons from Kansas, Jonas V. Brighton, who used the alias Frank Hudson, and his wife Virginia, who played the part of Frank's sister Jenny. They basically they rolled into the county and soon enough won the favor of Charles and Albert, who had apparently taken a liking to Jenny. Um, and now Brighton as Hudson, he goes on to reveal more to the two brothers about his supposed, colorful past, um, in a lot of versatile different crimes, but he's especially good, he says, at robbery. Might the Talbots be interested in such a partnership?
Hmm.
Turns out they were.
Oh,
And not and
let's
not
do
just
crime.
vaguely. Court documents would claim that the Talbot boys offered Brighton as Hudson $50 to kill Dr. Talbot. The Talbots were interested to the point of drawing up a contract verbatim,
Whoa.
which I actually reprinted. It's the date, Monday, October 25, 1880. We, this day of the Lord, 1888, go in contract together
Oh my God.
for the purpose of bank robbing, train robbing, and stag robbing. There's a lot of misspellings in this. And safe in each one
Are
shall be
stags
sworn
known to
unto the
carry a lot of
same.
cash?
I would assume they meant
Yeah,
stage.
probably.
Stagecoach.
But I just like
Uh,
the idea of doing stag robberies.
it would be pretty funny. And stay together until death in every attempt to obtain booty, spelt B-U-T-Y. And in each case, anyone betrays us of our men death, D-E-T-H, is his portion of any time the first train and bank is robbed, R-O-B-E-D. Anyone in the bond can killed or can resign, R-E-S-I-N-E, if he chooses. And if he does resign, he must keep all, A-L, secrets to himself, or he shall be killed and there must be a equal division of the booty, Bouty, and therefore any train is robed or anything is done, DUN. There is one traitor in the band that must be killed before we can proceed. Father, Fother. So
Geniuses,
that's signed
criminal
by
geniuses.
that's signed by all of them. But the traitor who needed to be gotten rid of was a hired hand who lived with the Talbots named Henry Wyatt. The Talbots reportedly told Brighton as Hudson that they had murdered Dr. Talbot. Wyatt knew about it and they didn't trust him. So he had to be gotten rid of.
Say when you said the one son ran out on the porch to catch the shooter and then stopped, my first reaction to that was, oh, he recognized who it was.
that very well could be. But what's interesting about that, you get both the Talbots in prison, and as the hanging date, January 13, 1881, gets closer,
Yeah.
one of them, Charles, gives a confession saying that he was sleeping that night when he heard his mom cry out, and it was his dad kicking her brutally on the floor. So he shot him in the back with a shotgun.
Well, that doesn't sound like how it was done.
No, no, it doesn't. But what gets even more weird about it, the other brother, Albert, pinned the crime on Henry Wyatt, who we mentioned, and
Yeah.
then Wilfred Mitchell, the other guy who was a farmhand and a party to the alphabet soup contract. So, yeah, they ended up being hanged and being put under that monument with the two hands. And that was, like I said, about 100 years directly before Ken Rex.
Wow.
And then, of course, you get to the lynching in 1931. That was the lynching of Raymond Gunn, which I think we have a couple small pictures of.
Coming right up.
I'm going to take a drink. I'm a little parched.
You go ahead and do that, and I'll pretend that I know what I'm doing to fill the dead air so that it's not just quiet time while you're drinking and there's something to listen to, even though it's not really anything. It's just me making sounds.
There's the lynching. But at any rate, this is, in my opinion, one of the most brutal lynchings that I think I've ever read about. And I've read quite a few of them. What happened was they found a local school teacher dead after work. She had been raped and bludgeoned to death in the schoolhouse with, no kids in there. And soon enough with that, they drum up a local suspect by the name of Raymond Gunn, who is a African-American man. And he had some priors with assaulting women. Of course, I'm not justifying anything, but
No,
he did have some priors about him.
So this newspaper clipping, Judge Lynch? What?
Oh, that's a good. I didn't even think about looking for that. If that was the
Think he was a
judge in
hanging
his
judge?
case. Oh man, but yeah, they found Mr. Gunn, And I'm not sure if they had any real evidence tying him to it, but he did reportedly confess, but we know how good those are.
Right.
I wouldn't have a problem believing for a second that it was a false or coerced confession. But the day that he is to be taken to the Nottoway County Courthouse in Maryville, just a second, I have my wrong notepad out. January 12th, 1931, they are, the sheriff is taking him there. And they're surrounded by a group of townspeople, in the car because he's trying to give him, an escort so the man can have his day in court about it, as our system goes. But they surrounded him and basically drug Mr. Gunn out of the car and marched him miles in the woods to where the schoolhouse was. And from there, they proceeded to cut a hole in the roof of the schoolhouse. And they bound Mr. Gunn using chains at his ankles and his legs, tied him from the top to suspend him down, then coated him and the building with paint thinner, gasoline, and other accelerants, and lit the whole thing on fire.
Jesus.
Like I said, one of the most brutal I think I've ever encountered.
Yeah, and by all accounts, death by fire is one of the worst ways to go.
Yeah. Utterly painful. And I guess I have trouble wrapping my mind around that too, because you're going to go burn your own schoolhouse down.
Well, there's that too.
On top
right?
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned previously, the problem with vigilante justice is they almost always get the wrong person.
Yes.
Now, in the case of Ken Rex, yeah, they knew exactly who they were getting and why. But that was a small town. Everybody knew him. Everybody knew what he did.
Well, and even the system acknowledged what he did by finding him guilty.
They just went too far and let him out.
Right.
So he was guilty in fact and in law. But in this case, who knows why they latched onto this one guy and said he's the one, right?
Yeah.
Somebody said it and everybody believed it.
And then he likely confessed to it because
after being
of
beaten.
Coercion. Yeah. Some sort of coercion, I would imagine. But yeah, that is not where this stops by any stretch of the imagination.
What?
Moving forward in time now, from the 100 years before Ken Rex to the 50 years before Ken Rex, we now get to about 20 years after Ken Rex. And this is the case of Wendy Gillenwater and Greg Dragoo, a couple in Skidmore.
Right in Skidmore.
Yeah.
Wow.
They lived in Skidmore proper. And it is October 16, 2000. Sheriff Ben Espy, who had been the sheriff for about 16 years at that time. And he, in my opinion, if you compare watching interviews with him to watching interviews with the sheriff that they had in 1981,
Yeah.
Danny Estes, Espy is much more competent and knew what he was doing. Um, but
Well, that's a
yeah,
step in the right
his
direction.
yeah, absolutely. And his election as sheriff also kind of coincided with the rise in rural methamphetamine.
Ah,
Yeah, people building their own labs and houses and really everywhere else. I mean, I don't know how many people know that meth labs can also be mobile. You can build one in a car pretty easy.
well,
Um,
everybody who's seen Breaking Bad knows you can do it in an RV.
yeah, this is true. It's one show I've never watched the whole thing of. I need to
You
do
know,
that.
my first try at it, it didn't stick, but then a couple of years later, I went at it again, and I ended up watching it through. It's pretty good.
Cool. I'm gonna have to do that. But yeah, I mean these two, Wendy and Greg, were known for the party scene, having fun out there. And again, that's the thing with these small towns. There really isn't much to do in the way of fun besides getting intoxicated or going and vandalizing
Yeah.
something. I mean, I should know. I my high school was in a town of only 600 people, by the way,
Ah,
here in Illinois. I know what the dynamics are like. My class only had 54 people in it. So,
my graduating class had 250.
oh wow. Yeah, man. But yeah, it was October 16th of 2000 that SB gets a call about a non-responsive female in a backyard in Skidmore.
Okay.
And so he gets there. SB himself actually responded to this call. So he gets there and he finds Wendy laying in the grass in the backyard, blood all over her. Um, and she had been beaten to death. And in fact, the word that law enforcement used for this crime scene
Yeah.
wasn't beaten to death, it was pulverized.
Oh.
She had been pulverized.
See, when you said that there was an unresponsive female, I just immediately thought overdose,
Uh
not
huh.
not beating.
Well, and the unresponsive female was the exact verbiage that SB used.
Yeah.
So I guess that's all they had over the phone. But he had they don't nobody knew what happened to trigger the fight inside the house, 406 Elm. Um, but Wendy and Greg were the next generation after the Ken Rex murder. Um, and Greg brutally abused her for years. And with this one, this day, it was a meth rage where the quote was, he didn't just beat her, he pulverized her. Broke 8 ribs on one side of her, 6 on the other.
That's like most of the ribs.
Yeah. He beat her to death with a flashlight, drug
Oof.
her body to the backyard, and when she was having her last breath, he took a bottle of Dawn dish soap and poured it down her throat.
Jeez Louise. And this was, he was in a drug fueled rage. I believe
One can assume
yeah.
so safely, I think, that he was in a meth rage. over it. But it was so bad that Wendy's mother could only ID her from the rings she wore on her finger.
Oh my word.
And that's what meth does to people. But the other vital thing here, there were reportedly neighbors who saw him beating her that day and didn't intervene.
Or
And there had to
apparently
be.
call anybody. Oh yeah, he's beating her in the house and then out of the house. That's not quiet.
Yeah, not at all. And he had about a 5-year history of brutal domestic abuse, and nobody said anything.
Yeah, that's...
I mean,
you know, there are a lot of things that go on in a home and a family that really are nobody's business. But sometimes some things are your business.
yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Definitely. It's a sad one. Very, very sad.
Yeah. That's...
Going through my legal pads. Like I said, I've got about 5 of them for what we've done so far.
It's crazy that there's all this...
Oh, yeah. And it doesn't even end. Did you want to get to Branson Perry today, or?
Nah, let's do that next week. Part
All right.
3!
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Cram the sickest parts into one. Yeah, that is, I think, all I have then, for now.
All right. Well, that is part 2 of our insane Missouri County of Nottoway.
Yeah, and it gets more insane. So.
All right. Yay.
All right.
Be sure and tune in next week when I attempt to run the show from a brand new computer.
Oh, yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, we have faith.
Well, guess what? Faith doesn't cut it. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.